everyone's alarms going off telling me it's 5 o'clock. So thank you for being here. I appreciate your time. We wanted to do this as we start our next consolidated plan. For those that I've not met, I'm Ryan Harkins. I'm the city's Community Development Director. So the Community Development Block Grant Program is one of the service areas within my department. We have a temp that's helping with us right now, and then a full-time CDBG administrator that works in this area. We also, as far as other tasks, deal with planning and zoning, the Arts Commission, neighborhood revitalization, and the homeless program are all areas, service areas in our department. The consolidated plan deals specifically with community development block grant funds, which is a federal program run through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. There are 10 communities total in Oklahoma that we call entitlement communities. We are one of them. We are probably the smallest, but the difference is we receive our money through the CDBG program directly from HUD every year. We have certain steps that we go through as part of that to maintain compliance. Having a consolidated plan that guides how you spend that money over a 5-year period is one of them. And right now we are getting into the 5th and final year of our existing plan, which is why we are trying to write a new one currently. So tonight is the first input session toward that. I know some in the community were thinking there's a new plan that exists that's drafted that should be out in the world of the internet. There is not. There won't be one until we take input from this and through the public input period. So over the last 20 plus years, we have done this program. We've had multiple consolidated plans. The existing one is on the community development website. Over the previous 5-year consolidated plan, including this final year we're entering into, we are being allocated $1.597 million. That's spread out roughly to about $336,000 to $338,000 per year. So the 5-year plan says we're doing these categories. Every year we do a specific annual action plan that says for this year, this program year, we're looking at these goals. And that can be 20 units of housing rehab, 10 units of demo as an example, plus regular program administration. We can use 20% of our allocation each year toward admin expenses, so that pays the salary of our CDBG administrator. From there, it's open to whatever activities. There are 3 national objectives that we have to comply with, one of the 3. Benefiting low to moderate income households, clearing or dealing with addressing issues that relate to slum and blight, which basically is when there's a lot of TLC needed and there's a lot of bad conditions in an area, or meeting an emergency need. Usually that addresses the aftermath of a natural disaster or something like the tornado we had here a couple of years ago. That would be an example of that category. But as long as one of those objectives are met, program funds can be used. Like I said, a number of categories can be part of that, but historically, Shawnee has only done, aside from admin, housing rehab, so owner-occupied rehab specifically, and then demolition of structures for owner-occupied households. Having said that, for a number of years we were very successful with that, and then the market had changed, and within those market changes we lost a number of contractors and some different staff changes happened, so we have not had as many owner-occupied rehab projects as we had hoped to over the last couple of years. So having said that, as we go into the new consolidated plan period, we wanted to make sure we got input from all of you to see what other project areas you wanted to include. I know some think that this is just a way or a funding source to do housing for the homeless. I will specifically say flat out, homeless activities or homeless assistance is one program area that you can tap into and use these funds for. but there are a number of others related to housing, related to public works, community facilities, and things like that. So really tonight, this is a chance for you to put ideas forward. And if you don't think of everything tonight that you want, don't sweat it. This is just the opening stage of the plan's development. We're going to kick off a 30-day comment period and give everyone a chance to provide input. We'll do another public hearing in a couple weeks to get additional input and share what we've heard so far and fine-tune what we're hearing, and then that will go into the final plan that we will basically give to HUD and say, what do you think? So having said that, any questions up to this point? I know I've done a very Reader's Digest overview of the program, but I want to make sure if there's specific questions. Yes?
If you don't spend all of your money for projects that you identify for the grant, you have to refund those.
Does the money go back to HUD?
Feds? Yeah.
No. So I'll give you an example. In one of our program years, we had aimed to do a number of owner-occupied rehab projects. We did not use all of those funds, so they just rolled over to and basically go into what we call previous year allocation. So that's sitting there for us to be able to tap still. HUD will basically look at us and say, you need to be spending funds faster. And so I will tell you, nationally, HUD is dealing with 241 communities that have timeliness issues on spending. So they're not spending their money fast enough for varying reasons. They've all had to come up with a plan to move money faster out the door. It doesn't go back to HUD. It just gets at worst case scenario, your future allocations get diminished until you spend the back funds. We're not at that stage yet, and I'm hoping we can avoid that. So we'll see how that goes, but we're not at that stage yet. I'll just put it that way. But it doesn't go back to HUD. It just stays in your pot to use. You just need to make sure you come back and keep drawing it. And we are one of those communities that has funds from previous years sitting there that we're trying to tap into. So right now, we're looking at around 338,000 for this next program year that's coming up, but we have previous year's funds sitting back that we can tap as well. So this is an opportunity for us to put into the new plan if there's things we want to make sure we include to try and stretch dollars farther, whether it be CIP from the capital or for capital projects, or to have more of an impact at the neighborhood level, or things that we just need to make sure we're taking care of. This is a chance to help use some additional dollars potentially to do that. So yes.
How often are budget reports submitted?
So we do an annual evaluation, a comprehensive annual report at the end of each program year. We do at the beginning of that program, each program year, what we call an AEP, an annual action plan, and then we do checks with HUD on a quarterly basis for how much we're drawing down. HUD's office will basically look at the numbers and go, your last drawdown was this date, you need to spend this much to be considered staying on track. So they typically will do one January, February, and then they come back again and do another check in May, and then they'll do a couple more checks over the course of the calendar year. Usually one right before the end of what they call the federal fiscal year, and then one after the beginning. But it just depends on when staff is ready to start pushing buttons and do those checks. So what we have for you tonight is really some project categories, and what we're going to ask you to do, if you didn't get some post-it notes out in the foyer, grab some of those, write some ideas down on project ideas. So housing, for example, if you are really keen on, I want to continue doing owner-occupied rehab, you write that down on a post-it note and you can put that on that board. If you think down payment assistance is a good idea, that's another example you could do. ADA ramps, sidewalks, streets, water, sewer in areas that are high in concentration of low to moderate income households, or is an example, that's a project, those are all project ideas you could put under Public Works. There is one out, a couple of boards out in the foyer, one for parks, one for homeless and at-risk assistance, and that could be like rent and utility assistance, for example, or street outreach. Then there's the other category. If there's something else that you think of that doesn't fit in one of these other pots, put the idea on a post-it note and stick it there. And the idea is we're going to put these things together and start to say, here's what the public is saying is the priorities to start with. So that's a lot of what tonight is about, to get your feedback and your input. We'll circulate around, myself and a couple of the staff from my department. If you've got a question, you're willing to grab us, ask, we can walk through that. Again, we need to make sure we get this to be what you want it to be, not what anyone outside as far as HUD thinks or what just staff wants or staff thinks. This has to be what we base on community needs, which is why we're doing this meeting tonight. This sets the course over the next 5 years, and understand things aren't set in stone. So if we're 2 years in and the community's saying, hey, we need to tweak this a little bit and add this or do these other things, we can do an amendment to add those activities as well. So we have that ability, we can be flexible. But, and then we can also have broad categories within the 5-year consolidated plan, and year by year kind of tweak things as we go too. When you're one thing may not be as much of a priority over another. So having said that, if you did not get post-it notes, Bree and Kimberly have some, and then there's some out in the foyer. Grab some and then just start to make some notes, and you can circulate amongst these easels, put ideas together, and then we'll bring them all back in here and you all can take a look together at the end. So take a few minutes. Yes?
Ryan, can I ask some questions? I
Yeah.
wasn't sure what the structure of tonight's public hearing or whatever was going to be, so. And I wanted to, and you already answered one of my questions, that the CDBG will, homelessness is a big part of that, and that will continue. Will you all add the homeless roundtable as one of the partners to that? There was a whole list of partners in that, in the previous.
Yeah,
plan.
in the current one, there's a whole list of community partners that was based on who was there at the time.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, we can add the roundtable. If the COC is approved by HUD, for example, the continuum of care, we would go back and do an amendment to add that in just as a matter of record, so that there's alignment if the COC were to apply for grant money through the state or from others, or just to give them additional groundwork to say this is part of what we're trying to do.
Well, and I noticed in there that that plan said that El Reno Youth and Family Services received the funding for the balance of state, which is what we're part of. Is that still how it operates? Are they still receiving that funding?
The balance of state that Susan's referring to, so everyone knows, is the continuum of care for homeless prevention and assistance that we're part of. That's a regional group that extends from Seminole to us, Guthrie, Woodward, Alva, and out into the Panhandle, to give you a geographic area. I believe they're one of 4, maybe 5 shelters that receive assistance through the COC. I believe one in Guthrie, one in Woodward, Alva, and they might be the 4th. There may be a 5th, like Guyman, but
Those weren't listed. This was the only one that was listed
Right.
in that previous plan.
and so the other possibility that could be was it was at the time it was written,
Right.
and then either may not be anymore and still may, no one knows for sure. And part of it staff has been in and out of that COC as far as involvement over the last 4 or 5 years. At times we've tried to be more involved, at times we just haven't because there hasn't been anyone available. We are working to be more active in that right now, just so we know what's going on and where money's going, even though we receive no money through the COC. But they rely on our numbers to help give them opportunities, and we've been a participant in with trying to provide support, just more support. Yeah, great idea, go for it. If you need a support letter, tell me, I'm happy to write one, type of thing. But yeah.
So the main group gets money for whatever goes on here?
No, the continuum of care gets, potentially has a pot of money they draw, but that's separate from the CDBG funds that we get specifically.
Okay.
COCs or continuum of cares could potentially get money directly from HUD or through state grant programs, but those are separate from any money that we get as an autonomous community from HUD. We have the ability, if we choose to use CDBG funds for homeless or at-risk homeless assistance. But again, that's a community level decision. And I'll give you an example of how that's done elsewhere in the state. Norman, for example, is an entitlement community. They use some of their funds as CDBG, as a city, to give to the roundtable or members of their continuum of care to do specific activities. So food and shelter receives City of Norman CDBG funds to do outreach, emergency shelter, rapid rehousing, those activities. So that's how the money from one pot can be used to help another group. But it's a matter of, you have to decide that's what you want to do, and then there's still a number of contracts and documents that go from point A to point B.
You said that we would have some money left over at the end of this fiscal year. We got additional money during that plan because of COVID, the CARES Act money. So we didn't spend all of our money, so will we be able to spend that CARES Act money before we start into the new money that we might get?
Okay, so the CARES Act money, the COVID money, was actually separate from our normal allocation.
Right.
So money from our annual allocation of CDBG funds still sits there. The COVID-related money was spent. So like if you saw an advertisement for a public hearing tomorrow, that's actually to wrap up and do the closeout for one of the COVID-related grants. We had 3 CDBG COVID grants and then 1 emergency solutions grant. And that was around the time Erica Genti started as the homeless program coordinator here. So those were used, the CDBG ones were used for rent and utility assistance, nutrition assistance, mental health assistance. Those are 3 big categories.
And those were used up, but it was the regular allocation that we have money left over.
Correct, yeah. So our regular allocation was not touched by COVID-related funds.
No, I understand that, but there's money left over that
Correct.
we didn't spend.
Correct.
That 2040 plan says that community development block grant funds will be used for home repairs and for a program for first-time buyers, but that's not available. I wanted to know, why is it not available, and is it possible to use those infill plats, pallets, I always get the name wrong. Is it possible to use those for this first-time buyer program that we're not doing, because I don't know why?
She's slowly catching on to where my mind's going in my master plan.
That's scary.
No, it just means a lot of people are thinking the same thing, and that's a good thing. So can we take all the extra money from our previous year allocations that we have and use that for, even though we haven't done any kind of first-time home buyer program in the past, even though we've talked about it, why haven't we had the staffing that we needed to do it? Before I arrived, we had a person that moved in and was kind of holding it together. And I don't want to say with duct tape and baling wire, but there was some chewing gum involved. And a little bit of duct tape. So we went from that to being more fully staffed and a little bit more flexible and willing to push the envelope. So I think staffing wise we're at that point. And I feel like if I went home and heaven forbid dropped dead tonight, there's staff here that would be like, damn the torpedoes, we're gonna do this, kind of attitude. So yes, we can go back to that idea. And I think in a larger strategy for how we do housing in the community to build more, I think that's a good step that I think we as the staff would like to see if the community is willing and willing to push to try and develop if we feel like there's community support. And I think part of that is first-time home buyers, some down payment assistance, a combination of things to where resources kind of layer to help people and stretch dollars farther for between city dollars, grant dollars, and your dollars as a homeowner. I think this is one of those, to me, this is one of those pieces to move us in that direction. So yes, we can, if there's support. I'm happy to start to work on that. I just need people to go, hey, great idea, I'd like to see this. Yes. Did I answer your question completely? Okay. Yeah.
Since we don't have CID anymore, which I'm assuming that's the case, because they didn't get their grant funding, is there not a way for them to get funding another way in order to be active and out working with people? Because I've sure seen a lot of new people lately.
CID.
Yeah, through the police department.
That program, yeah.
Is that what it is? CIT.
CIT program.
Yeah, CIT.
Yeah.
CIT.
So,
Sorry.
yeah, they had great promise in the beginning, and then that grant went away with the Justice Department at the federal level, and so it fizzled out. It would just be a matter of how would that type of allocation work to meet one of the national objectives, either helping address slum and blight issues or a matter of helping low to moderate income households. And so that would be the kind of the mental gymnastics we would have to walk through to make that connection. And it might be easier.
Once they hit the river, they're done.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying, it's going to be hard for them to ever come out of that. I don't know what you see, but that's the way I see it. And if we don't get someone to be in contact with these people as soon as they're either dropped here or get here or arrive here, however which way they come, it's going to get worse.
And that could be where some of that bucket of that concept of homeless and at-risk assistance, because you could do street outreach, for example, and put someone or a company or organization on a contract to do some of that and be that first initial touch to help work through some of the initial assessment. I think some of like our mental health providers have shown especially the last year, they are willing to try, but they have their own barriers to providing provisions, and those include staffing, but those are also just connectivity issues. So it can be done. It's just the how, and so that's
The tool you use.
Yeah, the tool we use and the way we structure that tool. That can be done. Yes.
What is CIT? I kind of get the gist, but I don't know.
CIT was a grant program for the police department, and it was designed to have specific officers go through. Pretty much everyone in the department at the time went through the training for it, but then certain individuals were actually on the streets, like a community impact type of situation.
Is that what it stands for? Community impact something something?
Yeah.
Crisis intervention, thank you. Yeah, so the idea was, instead of instantly having an officer show up when you're having a mental health issue or a mental health episode, like in front of the library, instead of me showing up as an officer and putting you in cuffs and taking you away, doing more of an intervention and de-escalation to really find out what's going on, getting you connected the right way so we get you where you need to be, and doing the things that are helpful rather than just putting you in cuffs, booking you, and putting you in a cell.
So when the Justice Department got slashed, that funding got slashed?
Correct.
Everybody went.
Yeah. So they were able to,
Still trained, they just don't have the.
yeah, they're all trained.
funds to pay for them
Correct.
to be doing specifically that.
They had the money for the first year, and they were able to get teams on the street, and they got every officer at the time in the department through the training. And then year 2 came, and the money went away, and so the program just stopped. It just fizzled out.
And they had, Jennifer Allen was going out with them, and she was very good. I mean, I really, when she joined them and they went away from using Red Rock, I really started seeing a difference. It was a big difference. They were making a big difference.
And so part of that grant, trained officers had hours paid for officers specifically assigned to this task, and then had a mental health component that was working alongside. That's that. Red Rock and Jennifer Allen were those groups. They were teaming up and embedded with those officers on the street. So it wasn't just me showing up to address someone with a mental health crisis. I had a licensed counselor with me to help walk through it and de-escalate things.
So a successful program was set aside and the city doesn't see any reason to fund it with police budget dollars?
The police department didn't feel they had the additional funds at the time to pursue that any farther. So,
Seems like mental health and the police department would be a good partnership and could equally put funds together.
And it would help them as well.
Yeah,
yes,
the whole thing goes by numbers.
yes.
And Red Rock even had a way to house them in their facility. They had it here, but also in Norman, where if someone had a complete mental breakdown, they needed to be placed somewhere. The social worker, police officer partnership could make sure that they got placed in Red Rock's facility.
Especially in the last 3, 4, 5 years where there have been an increase in facilities that you're not fully admitted, but you can go and be there. So I, as an officer, could take you and let you kind of sit almost as a holding area where you could just kind of cool out. And if you needed to make connections for additional help, that could be done. But that if you felt like, 12 hours later you were ready to go on your own, you could go. No questions asked.
So you mentioned earlier there were carryover funds,
Mhm.
right, for the following year's budget?
From previous years, yes.
So those funds wouldn't be able to be used for training or?
Again, it would go back to how would we make those funds move the right way? I don't want to say change the color of money, but having worked for the Defense Department for 4 years, it's about changing the color of money and getting the contract worded the right way. And again, there's those national objectives for CDBG that have to be adhered to. So it's showing how that adheres to one of those objectives. So it may be a case of coming along and using CDBG funds to help in an area that's closely tied or related to it.
You mean
And
at
then
risk?
at risk, yeah. Or helping the police department find some other funds to maybe take on that part. So CDBG can kind of stay in its more core function. Yes.
Could a trained police officer not, or officers not train others to be CIT
They could,
officers?
yeah. I mean, but that would
Without
be,
being police, quote,
maybe.
unquote,
The idea was law enforcement, training law enforcement.
understood. But I'm
So,
just
I
saying-
mean, they could go to another law enforcement agency and go through that training, but again, how much of that they're willing to take on? I mean, even if I could just flick money from one ledger on a balance sheet to another and give them that ability, it's them doing it.
Or is it pulling them away so they're just doing the CIT work and not just their actual work on the street?
Either.
Like it's specialized. that
It-
they're
it was
over
a-
here,
it was-
So then we're less two over here that's working on.
It was a mix of both, and I
Okay.
know part of it was that was a specific group that would go out and they would have core hours they would be available to write out. But again,
Am I the nicest way?
but again, even if I could just instantly and not get my hand smacked by HUD for doing it, move lines between an account on a ledger sheet, moving it doesn't mean that they'll do it. So, but I can certainly make sure we follow up and have this conversation ongoing with the police department anyway. I'm happy to do that. That's not a problem.
I would like
I would like to.
I am happy to keep that conversation going.
So do you happen to know if the officers that were trained enjoyed doing that work, or would they rather have been doing something else, and that's the reason that they didn't pick up and run with it?
Having not met every officer in the department, I can tell you the ones that I've met that have been through the training thought it was useful and helpful and enjoyed doing this type of work.
Why wouldn't they fight?
They did all they could do.
There's no money. Red
Yeah.
Rock was a big part of this thing falling apart too. They're not
Yeah.
absolved from anything. They told us a bunch of stories. They were supposed to be out.
Yeah, so these are all ideas I would say definitely write down, post on the other bucket.
Got it.
You can certainly ask, I don't want to shut the conversation down, but we'll happily take that conversation to the manager in the police department too.
And it was something like $68,000, I think, was the grant.
Yeah.
It was an odd number originally, and that was supposed to pay for the mental health person like from Red Rock. And then also pay the salary of the cop that was doing the crisis intervention team.
Yeah.
Well,
It wasn't
So
like,
now you're paying for a lot of things, not just one cop. You gotta pay for the mental health person, which with that grant, Red Rock didn't want to have someone out 24 hours a day because the money would
Yeah.
be gone. And then when you do it on call, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Ryan, it was something like they only wanted to be on call during the day. They didn't want to be on call at night when usually.
That was a struggle at times, but truly, availability after out business hour or day hours at times was an issue. And it was a way to provide, a big need that was there. And it took us a step of being able to be somewhat similar, like Oklahoma City has a group of officers that are specifically trained that do a lot of work with the homeless community, working with encampments and service providers and doing that intervention. And that, for some of those officers, that is what they do. Like, when they show up, that is their job for the day.
Yeah, they're like hostage negotiators or something, that's their job.
Well, that is their team. That is their unit that they're a part of, just like Vice. What's that?
Does CLEAT train CIT officers, is that?
They may have been the avenue that the original training was done, but is it part of their normal certification training? No. There may be
If they could get CLEAT credits for that, that would.
that would be phenomenal,
Man,
but
if we could think of this shit just sitting here.
yeah, I'm sure if everyone would just listen to all of you, the world would, this would be, my job would be easier, but,
Just think if there's this many more sitting here.
but I'm one department head and they don't always listen to me either, so,
And they didn't show up to help you either.
no.
No.
They've kind of learned, some of the folks that have been in the community a while and watched me work, no. Council, they just kind of, Ryan's coming, just move. Take the pot shots at him as he goes by, it's easier sometimes.
I said they could just watch you work though.
We're working on that. And I feel like there is some support amongst the commission members on the governing body to start doing some things. I think there is support to, if the community wants to add more activities than we've done previously, I do feel like there is support there to add those, but they want it to be based on what the community really wants.
I mostly looked at housing, so I'm going to get us on that. What are some public works ideas or things that were done last time that, so when I saw that, I was like, wow.
Zero. We've never done public works as an activity in CDBG before. So I was giving examples of what I've seen in other communities, because I've worked in a couple of other entitlement cities. So examples of public works projects that can be included, streets, sidewalks, water, sewer, storm sewer drainage.
What about a storm shelter, public storm shelter,
Can't do it.
maybe with, F stuff?
I wish.
There's too much liability.
Yeah.
Who's the person that gets to make the call to shut that
You
person
can't
out,
come
let
in.
them die, or
Yeah.
can't everybody sick?
You can't come in.
You just can't do it.
ADA ramps at sidewalks. So those are all types of public works projects. And I know I said earlier, we may not have started yet. From my experience, HUD at the national office in Washington loves to see ADA improvements. So they eat that up. I've had staff at HUD and I've had staff at state offices say, oh yeah, we love when entitlement cities or CDBG communities do ADA work. We love it because it's easy to say, look at, you're eliminating an issue of slum and blight, not just benefiting someone who's potentially low to moderate income household. So it's,
Charge off that, you know what I'm talking about, and I'm gonna say, charge off that mat down there on Farrell Street that's backwards, remember, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Found out that mat was backwards, so someone who was sight impaired was trying to, walk there instead of doing whatever those little dots do, it runs them right out into the street.
yeah.
Crap.
Just fix that mat, I'll be happy if you'll fix that mat after 2 years.
Put that down on a post-it note and put it up there.
Fix that mat.
Yeah. So, I mean, the purpose of tonight was really just to answer some questions, give you a basic idea of what we've done and what the potential to do is, and then let you have a chance just to provide feedback or ask other questions. So I really want this to be something that reflects what community members feel like is important. So even if it seems like a crazy idea, put it down and we can help. If you're not sure on wording, we can help wordsmith it, however, whatever you need. Like I said, this won't be the only time. We'll do a 30-day comment period and give people a chance to email comments and things like that. So don't worry about if you get home and at 1 a.m. go, crap, I thought of something else. Send it to us. We'll include it. But if you want to take a few minutes and walk around, you're welcome to do it. There's these two out here, and then there's 3 more out there. And if we run out of pads, we've got an extra one here ready to go. parks. Focus more on lesser used parks in neighborhoods and rehab of Celebration of Life Park. Leverage CDBG and TIF. Okay. Both possibilities. I will tell you, it's public information, you just gotta know where to look. The city has issued a request for proposals from consulting firms to do a parks master plan.
Waste money again? I mean,
With the idea that the parks that didn't, in the 2018, that haven't been touched yet, become top priority.
Okay, so that's gonna lead, I think you're probably gonna know where my question's gonna be right off the bat.
Come on anyway.
2018, you told us, not you.
But before me, yes.
Before you, we were told the 6 parks would be paid for and redone with that 2018 money.
And you got
2 of them that they spent $7 million on and misappropriated millions of dollars, yet no one will hold anyone accountable. So, with this new request for proposal to get Celebration of Life Park opened back up, where's the money?
Well, I mean, the idea there would be, could you use CDBG and TIF money to do like Celebration Life specifically? Yes.
So I get that, but that's gonna be a committee, like even the commission,
Yeah.
they have the final say, but that's a committee that decides the TIF money. So
Yeah.
the park, as much as I love the park, it's no different than any of the businesses or anything else, they're all equal because they're all in the TIF district. So if anything, it's only gonna get a small portion of the TIF money, not
Not a
$500
big
million,
chunk.
which
Yeah.
would do a good job and completely redo that.
And if you could, if the committee or the city commission felt like that specific TIF district should use most of those funds on that project, I mean, they can make that decision. That's certainly within their boundaries. So,
Well, no, but I mean, past experience says whatever the committee tells them, they're gonna go, we like it or we don't.
yeah.
But it's not gonna be, oh, we wanna use all this money on a park.
There's $1 million in the fund right now, in the TIF fund.
I mean, the one has between 5 and 6, and the other one has between 6 and 700,000. So yeah, remember you got 2, and
Right.
the boundaries kind of be this one and then the other. But you could leverage both and then other funds to it. Now,
Right.
the idea of could you use lesser used parks in neighborhoods? Yes, potentially we can. With the idea, for example, if we know there's a park that is in an area with a high concentration of low to moderate income households, that definitely ups the ability to drop funds on a project in that park. Even if it's just replacing aging equipment, we can do that. So
Well, that's
that,
kind of what I was thinking when I did that, because my old neighborhood, Smoking Oaks, Hardesty, and, man, I can't remember what that last road is on, it's the same one that Pierre Terran used to live on in one of our mansions. But where they come together, there's a bridge right there, a little, you pass a creek, and there's a park. That park hasn't been touched since I moved out of that neighborhood, probably 30 years ago, or more. So by lesser known parks, the only people that know about that park is people that lived in that neighborhood or live there now. And when we want to get infill lots and things like that, man, some of those parks that nobody ever cares about, we start fixing them up and now the neighborhood looks better.
and hard reality, the research shows one of the drivers, I mean, a great neighborhood school, number one, drives neighborhood values and people, attracting people to a neighborhood. A good park is another, kind of the second, third tier. I'm gonna jump over here to Public Works. Fix the map, yes. Update water lines in Ward 3.
It's my whole audit.
Okay. Audit in each ward of both usage and from the last rate increase to understand usage in hours, and how, if the increase on the bills is actually really having an impact, if it was worth it. Okay. Map, for the public, as to what area is in the program for replacing water lines. Okay, some of that might be in the CIP now. that's in the CIP. I will say, right now, we do not have a really good up-to-date master system plan for water or sewer. Is something I've heard even some of the planning commissioners go, "Dude, it's time." And I know our city engineer agrees, we just haven't taken the time to do it yet. Traffic commission reinstated. Okay, you do understand, for those that whoever wrote that, there are two members. Okay, you know there's former members of the traffic commission and the planning commission.
But the problem is, you can't bring anything up at the planning
Yeah.
commission meeting because there's no public comments.
I used to
Which
be on
means you
that,
can't
so I
address
know.
anything. And the whole reason they killed the traffic commission, because
I was there too.
the whole reason they killed it is because, God forbid, they all of a sudden decided that they had some ideas of things they wanted to look into, because we did have people come in here and say, specifically Boomerang over off of MacArthur, and then going north, there used to be no stop signs at all, and you could just barrel down through there. I did when I was young too. Now there's like 2 stop signs, all because those people came in and talked to the traffic commission.
Okay.
And there's no way to do that with the planning commission, because you can't go up to one person and say, hey, I'd like to have this done, because that one person has 0 authority to do anything. It takes everybody to do it.
And I spoke to the city manager about this not too long ago after a city commission meeting, and he said he's the one to call. I've tried to call him, he don't call me back, so I think we need a traffic commission.
Him and Red Rock are all loop.
Do what?
Him and Red Rock are all loop.
Oh, okay. All right.
Dig out sidewalks that are currently in neighborhoods, so ones that are like buried and covered up, dig them up, so they're usable again.
What was that?
Dig out sidewalks that are currently in the
Yes,
neighborhood.
yes, I know
Okay.
that was me.
No, I just want to make sure I'm.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's correct.
Funding to pay for costly sprinkling systems for buildings, churches to allow for housing.
Wasn't sure if that was Public Works or not, so.
I think that's an Avitas grant, I think.
That's
we
more
should
of a
make
housing
grant for people
but-
to do.
Good idea, I like that.
Do we have an Avitas board? Or other, how about that?
Okay.
I
I will be candid, I have dropped a hint to a member of the Avitas board that I'd love to have to $750,000 for a revolving loan fund for housing. Bridge repair at 10th Street, okay, over the creek, I'm assuming. Okay. All right, homeless at-risk assistance, restore CIT funding, continued find ways to fund CIT, street outreach, transitions out of homeless, housing initiative, like a hired gun type facility, okay. At-risk funding for at-risk activities for homeless. Transitions, rental deposits, utility assistance, prioritize those in need. Shawnee residents first, within 3 months, be here 3 months, and then the county, then the state, then everyone else. Money to rehab homes due to be condemned for use or at-risk or the homeless. Mental health assistance for case management by partner organizations to help get priority housing. Okay.
Hey, Ryan.
Yeah.
Get you to back up the public works for me for 1 second.
Yeah.
It's been talked about, I don't think they've instituted it yet, but Painter was supposed to be bringing back the chain gang, community service. And if we're gonna be like clearing off sidewalks, digging with shovels and things like that, if we can work with the DA, it seems like we could get a whole lot of, for the most part, free labor.
Community service, yeah.
Or even the city judge.
Because even with community service, they tell you, but if the guy or whoever it is that messed up, you bring your own shovel, you get to take that off on your time.
You get
But there's
that
benefits of
shovel, yeah.
actually putting in a little bit more effort. So if we could do that and then turn around and our own public works guys were working on water lines while folks that were sitting in county jail were out scrubbing sidewalks instead, watching TV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that's also a deterrent too, because now when you go to Park County Jail, you don't get to watch TV and play dominoes all day. You're gonna be outside in the heat. And it ain't no fun.
No. All right, let me move this one up a little closer. Okay. Housing. Add the homeless roundtable as a partner. Partner with co-ed area agency on aging to meet reno needs. Okay. Funding to pay for sprinkling for buildings. Funding to pay for mold and asbestos removal to use housing for at-risk persons. Okay. More assistance with repairs. Owner-occupied dwellings or renter-occupied?
Owner occupied,
Owner-occupied, okay.
sorry.
No, that's okay. Because I know we've had the discussion in our department. I've had the discussion with the previous city manager. And I will tell you, we left the discussion between Andrea and I when she was here at, let's focus on owner-occupied. For multiple reasons. One, the optics of what that might look like, trying to help some potential slumlords.
Yeah.
Two, the need for owner-occupied is there. And there are probably some other things we would want to probably need to discuss first. If we would need to go along dealing with rental units before we, either at the same time or before we did renter-occupied. So that's just where we're at now at a staff level. Assisting first-time home buyers, infill project for first-time home buyers, helping provide housing to transition out of homeless. Okay. So like one of the ideas of the housing study that we're starting is trying to come up with a bigger, more cohesive strategy rather than something like this. Ultimately, what I would like to see is we get lots cleared of liens, we get them in the hands of people who will build, either a nonprofit or a for-profit developer or an individual, almost like it's for an individual case or an urban home study type situation. We help provide land, down payment assistance, and some other things so that it's easier for people to take those lots on, live on those properties, and build a structure. It's one of the reasons why, if you look at the zoning code when we adopted the new one, the maximum lot coverage in R1 is 40%, but if you use the housing pilot, info pilot, it goes up to 80. Just little carrots like that we've tried to build in. So if there's things like that as well, throw them out. I'm happy to have at least a look to see how could we make that work. These are all good ideas. Anything else that triggers your thoughts based on any of this? Okay, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to put this together, and then we will make these notes available on our website under community development, and then we will start basically a 30-day comment period, and we'll do another input session and say, here's what we've heard so far. And then we'll take this and start putting it right into the consolidated plan as ideas. We can eligible, and then each year we can make adjustments on how much for each activity area we look at.
So I thought of something on the
Okay.
homeless thing.
Yeah.
Can the city not provide a few of the RV slips at the expo to utilize for RVs to be pulled in?
You wouldn't be able to.
Or is it on a temporary basis?
Well, you wouldn't be able to, because when they have shows, I can tell you, I'm sitting on that committee.
It's a lot to police that.
When you have shows and things. that
And then
are
they're out
part of
there, You know, or they have to move it, they don't own a truck to move it.
Yeah,
And
there's,
sometimes they're buying those things for like $1,500 online.
Well, I don't mean them buying them, I mean them people that don't have, that aren't living in cars, there's like a certain number that,
So using one of the slips is like a parking station for them.
The
to
safe
kind of
parking
be- The
zone.
safe parking.
Yeah,
We
spot.
yeah.
talked about
Or-
that using churches.
Yeah.
or the RVs are actually purchased and they're decent RVs and they're utilized through one of the nonprofits or whatever, where there's just a minimal number. I mean, it's like this parking lot over here at this church, there's a couple little areas that are kind of hidden back in there, and it would be a very safe place for somebody. If
Because
it's-
you just have to have a really good
You're
case
somewhere
management.
Right now. You
Yeah,
try to
yeah,
put
yeah.
another RV in there.
I got
there's no
you.
room.
Yeah, it would be
So
bad
you'd
now.
be kicking people out, or we
Yeah,
could be missing
I got
out
you.
on making money
Good
on
point.
renting that
Yeah.
space.
So we haven't talked about specific slips in the last couple of years specifically, but we have talked about like at the end of Independence, before you go in, taking that, the end of that street,
That little
and make,
parking lot.
yeah, that old parking lot, or even just the street itself, and trying to do an encampment area, like, could you make that a safe parking spot? We have talked about a safe parking program idea, where a church could take 4, 5, 6 parking stalls, provided they had a porta potty, or a way for someone to go to the bathroom, and security, and if maybe a trash can, and if they wanted to screen it, they could. Could we make that work? The discussion at the time was internally, there would be probably a lot of pushback from outside the community, and how secure could you have people be in those parking areas overnight? So if someone was living in their car, could 3 or 4 others be parked there overnight and then go to work in the morning and come back? How secure could we keep that overnight? That was the one question.
I was thinking just if there was an opportunity to buy a few small RVs, it
Yeah.
would be better, I mean, it would be less expensive than,
There is even an RV company that has come up with a model to house 20, 22 individuals within it. And it is basically truly a homeless bus. It sleeps 20, 22, and it costs about 150,000. And they can.
oh, well, and there's probably bunkhouses from like, oil field. I just now thought of that. Oil field probably, there's probably excess of
Have to
those.
manage it, have the people to manage
Yeah.
it, the funds to run it.
Yeah.
That's the main
So
thing.
that is,
I
Well, you
just,
wouldn't want very many, us anyway, if
I
it
mean,
just needs
so
to
like-
be temporary.
so if we use CDBG dollars, for example, we bought the bus, we housed 20, picked them up at a certain time every night, like 5 o'clock at Shawnee Rescue Mission, 20, 22 got on with their pets. That's where they were the rest of the night. You still have to have someone driving it, number one, or
Yes,
securing it,
right.
being security.
where do we get to park it?
And then where do you park it? Yeah. So it almost might be a bus that just literally drives around while people sleep. So again, it's maintaining, it's doing the case management. So that would have to be done through a service contract.
Yeah.
Again, it could be done, it's just, we gotta make sure we include that in.
But even like for the safe parking, like even if I had a parking lot that could be fenced, like there's a check-in, so they're already case managed, they have a tag in their car, and at certain times the gates close. You know what I mean? There's a code or something for them to go coming out, but where they could be there, but there's a connect person every evening that you connect with, and it's just considered safe parking. But they are case managed, they're just, you have a reason to be there for a short amount of time,
Yeah.
while the different agencies are working together to get them housed or get funds for
I was
something
thinking
else.
more for the families, is what
Yeah.
I was thinking
Yeah.
about.
And
And
that
for
is,
domestic items, cases.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and those, we were kind of doing some of that at higher grounds, but now there's, some other things happening, so, but that's kind of what I've been doing, it's just, they're just there, we know they're there, we can provide them breakfast or help them let their kids brush their teeth before they go to school, so we've been doing some things like that.
and Project Save is using one city-owned house or part of the duplex, as a transitional housing for their clients, one of their clients right now. So there's some things like that that we could look at expanding as well. We've just tried, again, historically, we haven't looked at any of that. Any other thoughts that come to mind or pop up? Okay, so I wrote those down and stuck them on. But if you think of something else, feel free to email Bree or myself. And we're happy to take comments. We will definitely include these. We'll start dropping this in now. We'll put these notes together. Like I said, we'll get it posted. And then this will be definitely included. I do appreciate all of these. These are all great comments and great ideas. They represent a lot of what I've heard many say in the community, but it's nice to just get that formal feedback. So again, we're not doing it by ourselves. We're making this what people said they want. So, thank you again. I appreciate your time. You're welcome to put some other thoughts down before you leave if you need to or want to. But otherwise, we will advertise another public hearing, crystallize everything, and then get this off to HUD. So thank you. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.